everyone. Welcome to another episode of the what do we call it? The tape. No, that's Eric's. Hold on.
Nope, we're taking his over.
We're taking his
take over the take up.
Welcome to another episode of the takeover. No, wait, it's
the needle bar.
The
it's
needle
on the
bar.
top of the screen. It's right up there, Jeff.
Oh my gosh. It is one of those days that it would probably be better if it was over than if it started. But we have Matthew Enderly here from Patch Rays. I'm Jeff Fuller from Fuller Embroidery Works. And
is he back there?
Yep, and we've got Justin somewhere. I'm sure he'll be here eventually, maybe. Hopefully, we'll find out. If not, we'll harass him pretty good. But we have Cindy King joining us. Hello, Cindy. Got it there. We have Jesse Gibson. Hello. We have TMG Custom Designs joining us. Matt's dusting out cobwebs. We have Mr. Mike Muldowney, the nerd from the north, joining us as well. I think that, last time when he got nominated to make shirts for the nerds in the north, I think he decided he was going to show up so he couldn't get nominated for anything today. Jesse's watching from Cyclone West to Virginia. We've got Gina joining us from Oklahoma City. Walker Woods Creations is Miss Letty Walker joining us. Mr. Mark Basalda from Japan, somewhere in Japan, some other country. But he's joining us as well. He'll be in this country pretty soon. I'm pretty excited for that. Another person that'll be local that I'll be able to harass a little bit more. And we have everybody telling me that it's the needle bar because, there you go. And we've got Hector joining us from Compton, California. The Compton. We'll say it like that. I think it's better. We have Sunrise Tactical Gear saying hello from Central Washington State. We have Mr. Mike Muldowney saying, oh, you mean I'm not doing that now? I'm so confused. No, you totally are. Still, always, and forever. We have Mr. Frank Dunn joining us from the UK, and that catches me up on the comments as far as I can see them. And there we go. All right, so today we're going to be talking about digitizing training and kind of what goes into that, depending on the different software that you guys use. So if you're looking at picking a software or you're looking at starting any kind of courses or digitizing training, that's something that's important. We'll also be going over file formats that are going to be supported for importing and exporting. Kind of talking about working with lettering a little bit. We'll see what we get to from there. And Mike would like to know what's an Etsy, Matt.
Oh, an Etsy, it is a unit of measurement for when you're in South America and you need to measure exactly 10 milliliters of water. However, you don't have that because there's no electricity. So you go on a website called Etsy and then you buy something that helps you do it without electricity. That's what an Etsy is.
That seems far too complicated for that, but
it's an inside joke.
Yeah, I know.
It will take equally as long to understand why that's funny.
Equally as long to understand and talk about and all that fun stuff. Oh, I've got a lot of stuff open here. I think I should take care of that before I pull my software up on the screen because
I think pretty much the goal of today was to kind of just answer your guys' questions in the lovely software called Pulse. Jeff is pulling it up right now. And mine, I would pull it up, but Jeff is pulling it up. So
okay, hold on, please. We're about to share all sorts of stuff that we probably shouldn't be sharing.
I will just drink my blue raspberry Kool-Aid from my Dickies cup.
No, wait. Hold on.
Delicious.
I got the right one.
Okay, I'll pull it up.
Forever. Look, I have this wonderful text that says the embroidery nerd.
Wow, that's very Harry Potter-esque.
I know. Let's see what the text is called. It's actually a built-in font into Pulse, and it is called Wizards.
Wow. Who would have thought?
Yep. So basically, I've got Tajima Pulse open here. We've got a lot of options in this version of Tajima Pulse. This is Maestro, I believe is the term they use. So they have different levels. The first level is Composer. The next level, then there's a few in the middle, and then there's Maestro. Totally didn't look those up before we started, but I've been working a lot in Composer and Maestro recently. But this is basically the Pulse interface. It's a lot like the interface that you see in Microsoft Word. It's got the ribbon up on top. Where we can do like a multi-user remote, which is a little bit different. And I haven't played a lot in that, or I'd go a lot further into it. But it does have some neat things like you've got your import emoji in. There we go. And I can basically select an emoji from the list here. And now I've got a monkey emoji. Here. Boom. All right, let's go ahead and delete that. But let's see here. We've got Matt went ahead and started a poll. What software are you digitizing in? So if you guys could answer that in the comments here. But let's talk about the different file formats, and we'll talk about the difference between a native format and a machine format that you can open. So if we go into Pulse and we hit the open key, we have PXF, and there used to be POF, and we have SXF. This is going to be really hard for me to pronounce. But we have kind of our native files that are here, and then we've got a few of our outline. We've got our SO files, stitch files, machine files, DST, PS, the GNOME. So we can open up any types of those files, but really the files that we want to make sure that we're saving in when we do save something is our native format. So for Pulse, that's PXF. For Wilcom, it's EMB. For Racoma software, it's .RDE. Melco is OMF. Help me out here. Floriani's .WAF. And Brilliance is .BE. So you want to make sure that when you're digitizing that you're saving your files in your native format, because sometimes when you're working in a file, if I go to save a file here and I save it as a, let's just draw something so that there's context in it there. And let me make sure I spell it right. I'm not going to have my business card accident all over again.
Oh, you mean where you spelled embroidery wrong in your business title?
Yeah, and nobody recognized it forever. So
embroidery is a hard word to spell, though.
I know, right? It's got
everyone spelled it wrong.
They do. So right now it's going to be saved as design1.pxf. If I go in here and I save it as like a DST, it's on the list, I swear, right there. If I save it as design1 DST and I continue to save it, right, you would hope that it would save it as a PXF, but actually it doesn't. So if I save this as a DST, it's always going to format to a DST. And I know that there's a few other softwares like that. I'm just going to do all design. So you can see design1.dst. So there are a few softwares out there like this that where if you save your file format as a non-native format, such as a stitch file, then every time that you hit the save icon, it's going to save it as a stitch file. It's just going to re-export that stitch file. And that's not necessarily what you want. You want to make sure that when you are saving your designs, that you're saving them as, and you can always go to File, Save As a PXF. There we go. And we'll go ahead and save that there. And the reason is the PXF file is an object file. And what I mean by object file is that if we turn off the 3D view and we turn off the stitches view, you can see here that we have object outlines. The object outlines are basically the boundaries. You can see these lines here. These lines are angles of inclination and our stitch angle lines. And what happens is every time we make a change to one of these objects, the stitches that are generated that cover our object, they're regenerated every time. So if we turn back on our stitches here and we move this, our target density is always going to stay at 0.4. Is I want to say what it's sitting at, and it should be sitting at, yeah, so it's at 0.4. So our target density is always going to stay at 0.4. Now, I can do something here that'll basically make it like a process, and I want to go outline to stitch segments. So now I've basically made this like it's a machine file. If we go to scale a machine file, what happens is our target density is not preserved and our stitches open up. And that can cause a problem when you're trying to resize a design or change a design. So when you purchase a design that's like a DST file or any type of machine file, when you get into the resizing, there's kind of an unwritten rule. And the unwritten rule is that you can roughly resize it by about 10%, which means that if it's at a target 0.4 density and you resize it, you're going to be going down to approximately a 0.35-ish density. And if you scale it up, you're going to go anywhere from a 0.45 to a 0.5 density based on the 10%. Now, when you're scaling up, it can cause issues with show through where you can see the fabric coming through. And if you scale down, it can increase your density to a point that you're going to start breaking threads. So that's why object files are better, because you can scale an object indefinitely and it'll regenerate the stitches and keep your target density at all the time. But if you don't scale, if you scale a stitch file, it's not going to achieve your target density. And I believe Matt's got a graphic here that he wants to pull up. There you go.
Yeah,
so you can go ahead and explain that.
A basic summary of exactly what Jeff was saying. So this is actually a blog post that we have on our website, theembroiderynerd.com. This one is showing you, so the top part, the top two are your native file, as you're saying. So if you make a line segment that's 30 millimeter length and 2 millimeter stitch length, you're going to have 15 points. If you resize that in the software when it's your .pxf file to 80 millimeters, you're going to come up with 40 points. But if you did it in a DSC file, same starting point. If you resize that from 30 millimeter, and I just realized I don't have a space there, to 80 millimeter, you're only going to have those 15 points. It's not going to create more points. It's just going to increase that. So where you get something where that can become dangerous. So you went from 2 millimeters to a 5.3 millimeter. So if you really like enlarge the design, you could hit that 12 millimeter thing, and then you're going to get the ka-chunk all the time, and you're going to get your jump trims, and you're going to get all kinds of weird things. Your stitching is not going to look right. That's why you shouldn't really work with a DST file. It's not typically recommended. Always native if you can. Once you're ready, I'll put it to your embroidery machine format. This one is just DST for Tajima and all the other ones like that. But that's pretty much that. And this article has a whole explanation of how it works and everything too, if you're really curious and you're a nerd. I'm a nerd. We're all nerds here.
Matt might have written it.
Yeah.
He's done a really good job. It's pretty in depth. But it really illustrates, if you guys are trying to edit files, you can make edits to DST files. It's completely possible. You can make edits to machine files, and the software that'll actually, I'll bring up my screen here one more time. Because I've preserved this as stitches, I can go in here to process, and I can do stitches to outline. And so basically I told it, now I can remove the stitches there, and I told it that I want it to try and figure out the outline and the angles and inclination by itself, so then I'm able to edit it furthermore like it's a native object. Now, you can see here that I have a lot of objects here. And some of the travel runs that it had in there are now individual runs instead of part of the object is what it was. And you can also see here, like if we come down here, you can see how it got a little bit choppy on the inside, and it's not a completely nice smooth object like it was when we started. And I can do that. Let me turn that on, and we'll get back to object. So you can see how it's not a completely smooth object like it was before. When you're drawing objects, you really want them to be kind of in the smaller, lower node area. The lower nodes that you have, the less decision points that the software has to make, and the smoother that it can draw those lines going back and forth. But let's grab a couple of comments here. I can see we've got Suzanne joining us from Rhode Island. It's going to take me a minute today. I'm like, it's been a long day. We have Barb LaFawn, who has a lot of software too, and I can relate. I have a lot of software too. And Gina says, great illustration chart. I've likened resizing DST to resizing in Photoshop. The software will do what it can to fill. And that's, it really comes into that when you're doing this, you want to try and make sure that it's going to run the smoothest that it can. And sometimes editing a DST file is not going to give you the best outcome that you could hope for. Now, if you're using software that your digitizer doesn't use, or your digitizer doesn't give out native files, then it's easier to go back to them and request an edit, especially if you need a really large change to it. It's going to be better if they make that edit in the native software for scalability, especially if it's size change. They'll also be able to look at things like whether or not your columns are going to be wide enough or they're too short. There you go. It's been a morning, Matt. All right.
You got the next topic?
Huh? Next slide?
Yeah. Slide.
Okay. What's on the next slide?
So next slide, I think that we all agreed on was to talk about, so we talked about file formats for exporting. Now one about file formats for artwork. So in Pulse, what type of file formats or raster, vector, stuff like that would we expect to be able to use in Pulse?
All right, so with Pulse, you can actually go in here and you can load artwork, and it kind of goes into all major formats. You've got Photoshop design, PNG. This is going to be your raster files. So not your vector files, which I'll cover here in a little bit, but you've got bitmap. I don't even know what a .cal file is, but we have it in here. Gem file, image, cut, ICO, TIFF, ICA, JPEGs, your Mac Paint. I didn't know there was a Mac Paint, but there is. But these are going to be your raster graphics that you're going to be able to import here. We can go into their symbols folder. I was hoping that they had something in there, but they don't. When it comes to vector, I actually like to use this button here. This is CorelDRAW Fusion, which they have. It's basically, it'll open up a version of Corel inside of Pulse, and you can import your artwork right here. And you can get these are going to be your vector formats than anything else, and there's a really long list. But your AI, you can actually get your BMP, so you can bring in your raster documents here. You can open a Word document, SVG, EPS. A lot of times when I'm going to bring something in here, I'll save it as an SVG or I'll save it as a Corel file, because I generally like to edit the things in Corel. I've noticed this with any software that opens up Corel with inside of the software, that you don't necessarily have all of the options available to you at the time or inside of this version. And you have to go to the full version of Corel to be able to edit all those things. So when I do it personally, I will import, or I'll use the artwork in Corel. I'll make any changes that I need to, and then I'll bring it into Pulse to make the changes that I want to. That's generally how I do that, and it's worked out well so far. So yeah, you can do that, and then if I want to convert everything to artwork, I can. I can uncheck that, but we can go ahead and close this out. And now it's going to bring our artwork in here inside of Corel. So now, or not inside of Corel, inside of Pulse, we can right click on it and we can convert the segment to any one of our major object types. Let's see if it's going to work. Convert segment to, and I want it to go to a steel, and it doesn't want to work. We'll go to a complex fill. Complex fill. And there we go. I can set my angle. Oh, yeah. You know what the problem is? I got to turn that on. I'm like, why can't we see the stitches? It's because I turned the stitches off, so we can go ahead and go back to steel, and now we have that option. And it's one of the easier ways to get some of your shapes. When using Pulse, I like to draw the artwork first and then move into assigning it stitch shapes and inclination lines. And I've actually started doing that in Wilcom as well. When I use Wilcom and the other programs that I use, is I'm starting to work more artwork oriented and then assigning stitch properties instead of just trying to do all of it at once. I found I can get a lot cleaner objects with fewer nodes if I do it artwork first and then go into the digitizing. So that's one of the ways that I've changed how I work when I started using Pulse, and it's worked out really well for me so far. But that's how you would import an object, an artwork, or a graphic of any sort. You would go through, and my brain just went blank, Matt. Ugh.
All right. So we go to the next one.
Yep, let's go to the next one.
All right. Well, do we have any comments we want to bring up? Oh, okay.
Nope.
I lost my sheet. Where'd my sheet go? Okay. So, do you have a design available to show?
Hold, please.
All right. So this question is going to be, how can you use the software to simulate the final embroidered result? And what factors should you consider when evaluating the design's appearance? So I don't know. We did kind of a live a couple weeks ago on how to like do a mock-up of the design on like a hat or something.
Yep, we did.
Some like other software, you have like TrueView, you have Stitch View, and all that. Can we demonstrate that a little bit on here?
Yep. So I will go ahead and bring my screen back up, and I just have the text that we were working with earlier. We can do the TrueView here. We can also, remove not the stitches, the graph, if my brain will catch up. But we can simulate the embroidery there. We can also export an image file, so we're able to export this as a JPEG or a PNG, and we can also specify the actual size, the DPI, which whenever I export a design, I like to do a really high DPI so that I'm able to scale it if I need to in the software afterwards. But to simulate the embroidery, we would just turn on 3D view, and then we could save out the image so that we could put it on top of a garment or some other type of item like that. We also have the slow redraw ribbon, which is down here at the bottom, that we are able to go through, and we can simulate the embroidery itself. So we can look for anything like pathing errors or weird trims. This is generally when I spot the majority of this stuff is as it's moving. So it's one of the things that I like to use here to make sure that my designs are going to run fluent. And the slow redraw is available in any software that I've seen. Every one of them has it, and it's something that I use quite a bit. Let me see here. All right.
Okay. I think that's good.
Okay.
If anyone else in the comment section have any questions, again, we're here for you. Just answer any questions. If you've never seen Pulse, or you're well experienced in something like Wilcom or in Brilliance or anything else, and you just want to see how it's done in Pulse. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to the next question. And before I go into the real question, while I'm waiting for a couple comments to come in, I will just ask Jeff, how long have you actually been digitizing Pulse?
So I started actually digitizing in Pulse. It's been 3 months? I feel like that's the safe number. 3 months, 4 months. Probably maybe a little bit longer. Maybe it's been 6. One of the first things that I did when I got into Pulse is I tried to identify the features that I would use the most. It really comes down to what I'm used to, how I was used to digitizing, and trying to find the features that allow me to do that without too much effort. And then as I've used it more, I'm starting to find more of the hidden features in there that I'm able to utilize. But it took a little bit for me to be able to find those. I have had a couple classes with a trainer from Pulse, and he's fantastic. And most of it's been, as I use it, I'll try to figure out, okay, I get stuck somewhere. And it's like, all right, I'm stuck here. Now I need to get past that. How do I figure out how to get past that? Where do I go look? And a lot of that is going through the help manual, the user manual, which user manuals are fantastic in software. I wish that there were more uniform terms across all software. Like everybody calls this the column A, or everybody calls this the column B, because when you go to search, when you're used to calling it something and you go to search that in the user manual and it doesn't pull up, now you got to figure out what they called it.
A lot of that is because they trademark it too. So like we all call it the knockdown stitch. That's actually a trademark term from Brilliance.
Yep.
So that's why you won't see it called knockdown, like officially called knockdown on like Wilcom or Pulse or whatever, because that would be a breach. So
yeah, and it's finding those types of things and figuring out where they're at. There's a lot that you can do with Pulse, especially if you have a Tajima machine. It's really amazing that you can adjust tension, slow the machine down, speed the machine back up, which are features that are generally, if you have a software that's native to the machine that you have, you get a lot more functions on your machine that you're able to unlock and utilize, which can be really fun sometimes. When you can tell, if you're starting and you wanted to run slow for a little bit, it's really good. Let's see. So Gina says Melco uses I read it Premiere. You might be Primer.
I read it Primer.
Primer. There you go. And
Premiere would have an extra E in there.
True. And Suzanne would like you to make a converter for the different software phrases between all the softwares.
It wouldn't be hard, but the problem is there's only 20 hours in every day. So
there's only 20 hours every day? I thought there were 24.
Yeah, the other 4 are used for
sleep.
Yeah.
We'll go with sleep.
I don't know. All right, so that was that question. The next question was going to be, and I think you might have actually answered this elsewhere recently. Mm-hmm. So are there any unique features in Pulse that allow you to like keep track of like production metrics? So like how many yards of stitches it's going to use and your different colors, and if it's for a customer, you can keep like their name in, and this is a note in the design file saying this is the type of design or a garment I use, stuff like that.
So basically like design properties, notes that you attach to the file. There is, I'd have to find it. You can, there are features that I use a lot, and that's not necessarily one of them, but I do remember going across it. There are things that you can add, like hoop selection. You can add, fabric type. Generally, runtime is based off of the calculation of stitches. I know that it has a quote builder in here, which is really, really cool. Where you can basically you specify a price per 1,000 stitches, and if you guys watched our pricing video, I price by the hour, but I basically, the longer you do this, the more you can look at a logo and go, okay, well, that's going to take this long. But you can also you can generally start to get an idea of what your cost per 1,000 is, and so with that, I'm able to utilize that in the software. I can put in my cost per 1,000. I can pull in a design, and I can have it auto generate a quote. It also factors for things like your hooping time and your cleanup time and your thread changeover, which is really, really cool. And it's something that's different that I think really kind of sets us apart. We went over that in the live 2 weeks ago, I think. But like, Barb says here that Pulse has more underlays. And it does have quite a few if you go in here, and we'll just draw a satin object. And I don't even, it's bad when you don't even look at your scale. But I didn't even look at the scale, so I don't know how.
We're not embroidering it, so.
Right, like it could be way too big here. Oh, no, wrong button. Probably way too big. Still way too big. Let's keep bringing it down. Let's just delete it, and we'll zoom in here. I'll do this one. Wrong button. So now we've got our stitches. We can actually go into the underlays. So we have 3, 4, 5 underlays here. And you can, if you want to, you can specify the underlay order. We can pull up, we have our advanced properties box. Here we go. And we can set our values here. So I can do the zigzag, parallel, perpendicular, and contour. I can set the sequence number if I want to, which is really nice. So if I check 2 of these and I tell it not to use a default sequence, I can tell it what sequence I want it to sew these in, which is really nice when you want to move from, let's say I want to do a perpendicular first or an edge run first or tatami first. I can do those here, or they call it a mesh. I can do those here, and I can change that around there, and I can change it. If you make a change before you digitize an object, it's going to be that change from that point on. Or if you have an object selected and you make the changes, it's only going to apply to that one object. So it looks like it has 6, 1, 5, 6, and I can do all of them. I can apply all of them. I don't know any point you would, but sometimes I've ran into a thing where I would like to run one more than I have available, and then I have to manually digitize it. Where here I can add those in. And I can, you can go in here and change your stitch length, your inset, your densities. Just depends on how you want to run it. But it's one of those things that I've found that I use. And of course, if we turn off our 3D view, you can see we have a lot of underlay in there. Pulse is sold in, because Gina asked, is Pulse sold as a complete software or in components as Wilcom is? Pulse, Wilcom sells in levels, and Pulse also sells in levels. From the way that I understand it and how I've seen it all priced is that Pulse doesn't have elements that you can add on to increase your level. You basically buy the level and it has everything that's in that level included. And if you want to add more features, then you have to buy the next level. Maestro, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's kind of similar to how Wilcom does Embroidery Studio. You have your Deco Light. That would be like the lowest level.
The component.
And then you keep going up to a different level. And once you hit, was the digitizing is the one that we have? The big one? I think it is.
Yep.
Once you hit digitizing, with Wilcom, you have to pay that get in the door fee, and then you have to pay for each component. With Pulse, you just pay for which step you're on, and you get everything. So you don't have to pay a couple $1,000s for a car and then pay $400 for a wheel and a steering wheel and stuff like that. You just get the whole car, all the luxury items with it.
Yeah, and not everybody needs the Maestro level. They can go with a. I see Identity Threads uses Artist Plus level. You can do a lot of things in those different levels without purchasing a new, adding elements. Maestro, I can run a borer, I can run sequence, I can run beads. I don't necessarily need to run those things. And so based off of the machine that you buy too, you might look at different levels. But the native Pulse formats is PXF. So I know the older format is POF, and then at some point they changed to where both the software could read POF and PXF, and now I believe that they've dropped the POF completely, and it's just PXF. So that would be the native format, though, is PXF and not anything less. And there we go. I'll delete that. Let's see if anybody has any questions.
I got the next one.
Okay. So
I won't do it like the last one, because the last one I read 2 halves of a question, which is why it didn't make sense.
Got it.
So it was supposed to be, are there any features in Pulse that allow you to help you get the fundamentals and the baseline of stitch angle, or not stitch angle, stitch densities and stuff like that for different materials like leather, denim, twill, cotton, stuff like that?
So there is, and if we'll go ahead and pull my screen back up here. There we go. You can see here that they call it recipe. And the recipe is basically for the type of fabric it is. So if it's cap, Chanel, leather, like I can't even say that one. Okay, satin, shirt cuffs, silk, sweatshirt, t-shirt, towel. You can change the recipe, and then they also have basics, custom, and none. So within this recipe, if I find something that I feel works better for a t-shirt, I can save not only the preset as a t-shirt, because that's going to be in there all the time, but I can save it as a custom one inside of there. So that kind of gives you the baseline of what they recommend for using. Let me figure out I've been digitizing in more than one software today, and so all my shortcut keys are really messed up in my brain. But we can take this object and we can basically look at it and go, okay, well, what they're using for that material is, there we go. Looks like an edge run and a parallel underlay. Let's go ahead and pull this up, and we can just look over here because that would be the easiest way. So they're using actually just a contour underlay and not a parallel underlay. And that's what they're picking. And again, that decision, it goes off of not only the type of object, but the size of the object too. So if you have a larger object, that's going to change. But our density sitting here right now is at a 0.45, where standard density would be a 0.4. Depending on what you're going on, like if you're going on a hat, I drop down to a 0.35. Let's find out what happens if we go here and we change. And you can see I've got my density there. But if we go down to the design property, let's see what happens if we change it back to normal and presets basic. And as you can see, it doesn't look like it applied that change to it. But if you make that change before you start digitizing, then that's going to be your object. That's going to be your object properties that you're going to be able to utilize throughout the whole design. If that doesn't make sense, let me know. It's been one of those days. Sometimes I think a lot of the stuff coming out of my mouth doesn't make a lot of sense. But we can also, not only can we account for the density based off of the item that it is, but we can actually input the fabric thickness in here. So if we actually have a measurement of how thick the fabric is going to be, it's going to help use that to estimate how much pull comp that it's going to need to do. One of the other unique things that you can do in Pulse is not only can you edit for pull compensation, you can also edit your satins for push compensation. It's not something that I use when I'm doing like text, because if you have, an O, which is a closed object, and you put a push compensation, it's actually going to apply the push compensation to the two objects, or where those two objects meet, which is not necessarily something that you want. But if you're using like a standard I, it's going to give you the push compensation in an I. So that's, another thing that I don't think that you can accommodate. The only way you can accommodate for push and will com is to actually digitize the object differently. You can accommodate for pull, by adding pull comp, but I don't think that you can add any push comp and will comp. So let me know if there's any more questions there.
I think that's it so far. I will try not to forget the question I just had pulled up. Okay, yeah, it was so a lot of other software you can do, like mixed media designs and stuff, where you can embroider, you can send the same exact like objects from your software to another software to make like a file to use a laser cutter or something like that. Is there a way to export your designs from Pulse into a common format like SVG or some other vector file that you can then pull into any vector software?
Yeah, let's pop this up here. So if I wanted to move if I wanted to convert this to objects, right? We actually have, we can process. I need to, if I want to modify the text, remove, transform. Hold on, I got it. Before or after. Process. So I've processed from outline to stitch segments. And then I can go ahead and go process and do stitches to artwork. And that's going to bring it into the artwork. And that's actually how we did the shirt design last week. But between using process, if I want to go text to segments, and then I can convert that text segments into artwork, into an art segment. And now I'm running, this is going to be an SVG. You can see that they're outline files. So if I wanted to pull them into something, and we could do that, or I can change the fabric. But ultimately, I'm able to export these into the, I can save it as a CDR, a SVG, an AVI, and now I can pull it over into my cutter file, which is going to be good. Transform shape auto. There we go. Convert segment to, and then I can pull it back up to satin path if I want to, which it's going to want me to input the angle line, so it's going to come out weird like that. Generally, when I modify text in this fashion, I'll pull it into a new, not just text. When I modify something like that, I'll pull it into a new file, and then I'll do the artwork modifications there so that I can export it from there. And that way I'm not messing with my native file, because like I said, you want to make sure that you're keeping your native objects as native objects as long as you possibly can. So we've got that. Now, just checking there for questions, and I don't see any. But for those of you guys that are interested, up on our YouTube channel, I'm starting to release Pulse videos. I'm starting in the composer level, and I'm going to work my way up into the Maestro, because with every level you get enhanced and added features. So right now it's going through the features that are in composer, and then we'll move up to the additional features that are on top of that. And that's going on our YouTube video. So I pushed a button on the screen and did something weird. Was not expecting that. But those videos are going up live on our YouTube channel. I released 2 today. I've got another one stacked and ready to go for tomorrow, and a few more scheduled after that. So those videos are going up to our YouTube. So if you guys do want to catch these videos, if you do want to learn how to do these things in Pulse, you can go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Embroidery Nerd. If you're not in our Discord channel, you probably should be. So we have a Discord. It's the Embroidery Nerd Discord. Matt's probably got a link for it. I believe you can go to links.embnerd.com, and within there you can click on Discord. So Discord is where we do a lot of our day-to-day chatting, along with, if you have a question and you're looking for a little bit more immediate help, you can ask it in there, as well as you can ask it in our Facebook group as well. So our Facebook group is, of course, the Embroidery Nerd group. If you're watching from there, we appreciate it. If you guys need to join, you can make sure that you go and request to join. You have to make sure that you answer all the questions. We are very stickler on answering all the questions, because we use that to make sure that you are actually a person. That's number one. And number two, that you're not there to spam the page. You'd be amazed at how many people that just are I think it's 3 or 4 questions, actually help us screen. So if you guys want to join our Facebook group, you can go there. You can also join our Discord server, and you can join our conversation that we've got going on there. Coming up right now, this month, we're running our shirt sales. So the Embroidery Nerd shirts, we do this shirt sale once a year. And that is going on this month. At the end of this month, that's going to close. So if you guys do want to get the Embroidery Nerd shirt, I would jump on it this year. And remember that this year's design is not going to be done again. And it's basically the Embroidery Nerd. Like you can see it there in wireframe. I'm not going to call it wireframe. What would you call it, Matt?
I would go with not true view or 3D preview, but kind of like a wireframe.
Yeah.
Wireframe.
I mean, that's what I think of when I think of wireframe. But we've got that. That's the design that we did last year and the style that we did the first year. So we're not going to be doing this design again this next year. So if you guys do want to get a shirt, remember that we don't print the exact same design every year. We always make a change to it, so we can tell whether or not you guys are wearing this year's, last year's, or the year before, and we'll be able to tell if you're wearing next year's as well. These shirts are made by Mr. Justin Armenta's company that he works at, and he does the fulfillment and all that fun stuff through there. So it's a great way to support the Embroidery Nerd and help us keep the lights on, the server up, and just helps us keep everything going.
Another fun thing you can do with that too is, if you haven't noticed, some of us do go to trade shows, so you could get one, and we will sign it if you bring a Sharpie.
Yeah, if you bring a Sharpie, we're gonna underline, underscore, and exclamation that, because I am most definitely not going to remember to bring a Sharpie with me at every show.
But we will only sign the garment, not the garment wearer.
There you go. I
have to throw that caveat out there.
Keep that. Coming up here in July, I'm going to be going to the Applique Getaway. I'm going to be teaching there a couple classes. So if you guys are looking at going to the Applique Getaway, I'm going to be one of the instructors there. I'm trying to think of any other announcements that we have, Matt, other than the shirt orders. I can't think of too many more things. I know DAX in Tinley Park is happening here shortly. If it's, I saw a post from Eric. He's going to be teaching at DAX in Tinley Park, and I saw he arrived in Tinley Park. So I'm guessing that the trade show is probably this weekend. It's not one that I typically go to. So
the only other thing I was going to say is that on the lovely thread converter, I added candle thread, but that's not relatively new news because that was done on Pi Day already. So that was a month ago. So
I was like, Pi Day. Wait a minute.
Yeah,
my brain
I'm a little behind. I'm playing catch up. If you haven't noticed, I've been gone for a little over a month doing training. So, but I'm back.
Army things. Air Force.
Army.
Yeah. Military things.
Yeah. It's joint. I'll give you that.
There was. All right. Well, I'm not seeing a ton of questions coming in, so I think we were just going to drop this off a little bit early. If you guys do have questions, you can always ask them in the Embroidery Nerd group. If you guys want to have a conversation with us after the fact, you can jump over to our Discord and you can catch us over there. But unless you have anything else you want to add, Matt?
Not really. Just as long as everyone subscribes to the YouTube, like the video, we'd greatly appreciate it. We're trying to hit a certain milestone. I forgot what it had to be. I think 4,000 watch hours is what we're going for.
Yep.
We're like super close. We're at like 3,800. Once we hit that, we might do something cool. I don't know yet. Who knows? We're over 2,000 subscribers, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. We'll see. Maybe if it happens during the shirt order.
Yeah.
If it happens this month, maybe we'll get out some shirts. But I'll go ahead and close it out. So we have Matthew Enderly from Patch Freeze. I'm Jeff Fuller from Fuller Embroidery Works. We're both here representing the Embroidery Nerd. We'd like to thank you guys for hanging out with us, and we'll catch you next time.
See you guys.